Welcome to Mindfully Integrative Podcast with your host, Dr. Damaris G. Mindfully Integrative is a podcast discussing ways toward mindfully incorporating integrative health into our lives. This podcast will have informative resources, fun topics, interviews, and discussions relatable for today with a true mindful perspective in a mind-body, holistic life approach.
Hey, how are you? So let's talk about what insulin resistance is, and is there just one type of it? I would like to tell you that you can have about 10 different types of insulin resistance and how it can affect the body. Now, what does that really mean? So, insulin resistance is when the body has an accumulation of insulin within the bloodstream and it is not able to kind of distribute it properly. That does not mean that the pancreas has been overworked. It just means that the body has not been able to dispense the throughout the cells, and it makes it less responsive to the insulin. So, which leads to an elevated blood glucose and causes metabolic issues. There's so many things that happen with metabolic issues and hormones that have disrupt our life. So through time, through age and such, we have some disruptions. But insulin resistance is caused and has many effects in the body. So let's go by the number one. Okay, obesity. Everyone talks about the body fat, the stomach and how that visceral fat. Well, that in itself causes inflammation, and it is increasing in glucose blood sugar, and it will eventually at some point cause your body to have type 2 diabetes. But that's not the initial reason. When you have fat and it sits in the fat cells, that in itself has a hard time releasing and getting rid of that excess insulin. Now, how does this affect the liver? This affects the liver by the insulin becoming less responsive. And as I've talked about this, and we'll go more extensive, is the importance of how the liver is metabolizing many things in addition to insulin, and it does not let us reduce that flow. And because what that can do long term is you'll hear fatty liver. Now, you'll hear some individuals say, okay, they were alcohol-induced cirrhosis of some sort of problem with the liver. But the liver does so many wonderful things, and it's a magnitude of things to metabolize. And we, as individuals, need our liver. We cannot be without it. And most individuals are coming with fatty liver. And actually, that's caused because of insulin resistance. Excess fat, not just fat itself, but an excess deposit of insulin, because the body is not able to metabolize and break down that excess. Muscle. It affects our muscles, our skeletal muscles. So long-term longevity, you're going to hear you need skeletal muscle to live longer. You need a stronger bone density to live longer. It's not about necessarily just being thin or heavy or such. It's really about, getting up, walking around, and that skeletal muscle also takes in glucose. And when you take in too much of the sugars and they're not processed properly, it will affect your energy, and it will actually deteriorate over time, reduce your energy intake. How does insulin affect inflammation, and what is that really? That reflects our life in inflammation due to stress, your diet, autoimmune, and worsening metabolic issues, fat storage, elevated sugars, and such. Now, individuals ask about what is that reference to hormone imbalance. Hormone imbalance is affected through insulin resistance by such individuals that may have polycystic ovary syndrome, or may have Cushing's, or may have endometriosis. Those inflammatory responses and excess insulin resistance within the bloodstream will affect different parts of the body, even the thyroid. So in that sense, they usually call it like a Hashimoto's. And what happens is we're just not discussing that insulin resistance affects many parts of the body throughout. It's not a one system approach. And that's kind of the issue that I find, that we just look at one thing and then we think, okay, that's it. That's all it is. But really it's not, it is what you're putting in your body. But then once your body's then reacting into this insulin resistance, why haven't we made changes? We can't make changes if we don't, identify what is going on. And so that's why when someone's like, oh, it's just hormones, if they're in balance, it's not just the hormones. There's obviously something else there. So how does that affect your fatty acids? Your fatty acids are affected when you're thinking about your diet. And is it more saturated fats, or is it the good oils, like avocado, or are you eating kind of that seed oils? So that is a big factor, because those saturated fats are harder to get out of the body. So that will also affect the amount of insulin that is accumulated within your bloodstream. Now, I mean, yes, there are some genetic components. Why are some individuals more insulin resistant than others? There's a genetic component, and there is an inherited composition. Like, I'm inherited to have type 2 diabetes, and I may have it in my 70s, 80s, or 90s, but I really have a choice of how I can manage my life from now until then and long-term effects. And I know that exercise, strength training, what I put into my body, lifestyle management, and maybe even a microdosing of medications is needed, but I know what I need for my body, and the genetics are not going to be that full answer. Just because something says one thing does not mean that will be the outcome. Stress induced can also cause a spike in insulin within the body and cause a resistance, and that's due to like your inflammatory response and the markers, and it will just kind of wreak havoc. And you hear the oxidative stress and the inflammation will cause problems, will cause a dysregulation, and that will affect the way your body is. Now, what you put in your body medication wise, that also has an effect. A lot of like steroids, antipsychotic medications, beta blockers for the heart, even excess insulin use, or inappropriate diabetic medications, or inappropriate hormones, or anabolic medications, like things that are not regulated. I'm a big fan of, if I'm going to use pharmaceutical drugs or medications for clients, it's low and slow and modified as needed. And most of the time it's food, nutrition, lifestyle management, then low and slow if needed for intervention. So if you know me, that's kind of where I stand. That's my quick overview about insulin resistance and kind of like top 10 possible reactions, or where the insulin can increase within the body. If you have any questions for me, reach out and I will talk with you soon. Thank you for listening to the Mindfully Integrative Show with Dr. Damaris Maria Grossman, family nurse practitioner. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and is not the substitute for professional medical advice, diagnose, or treat. Always consult your healthcare provider before making changes to your healthcare routine. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss an episode. If you enjoyed our show, please support us by leaving a mindful review on Apple Podcasts or your favorite streaming platform. Interested in being a guest or more information? Email us at info@mindfullyintegrative.com. For resources mentioned in the show, visit our website at www.mindfullyintegrative.com. You can also connect mindfully with Dr. Damaris on her social media links found on the site. May your strength and peace guide you to find a mindful way every day. Namaste.